Sefirah Shiurim bring a losh in the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Emor. Man de moti Torah lahai yoim. Whoever comes in purity to this day of Shavuos, v'chushben eloi is abed minei. He didn't miss the counting, means he counted the Yemei HaSefirah. Kadmatia lahai leilo liboi lemale b'doiraisa. And when it comes this night, he's zoiche to the shleimus. He learns Torah the night of Shavuos. And Reb Shila Belze was medayik. It says, one who comes Torah lahai yoime, v'chushben eloi is abed minei. Really, Erev Shavuos is the day that we end the Sefirah, and lahai yoime is already after we finish the counting. Why? It should be the order, one who didn't miss the counting, and then he arrives b'tahara to the day of Shavuos. So Reb Shila Belze says, a moire dikinakuda. Says sometimes we come to the Yom HaChamishim and we look back at the Yemei HaSefirah and we see we didn't prepare ourselves properly. And a person could become miyuyish. So the Zohar HaKadosh is telling us, Kivan shebemaise kayim HaSefirah. Since he counted the Yemei HaSefirah, b'poil, b'maise, yochel l'saken hakoil b'shleimus. If you have the Sefirah done, you come into Shavuos, we can be misaken everything b'shleimus. The similar losh in the Shem Mishmuel in Parshas Bamidbar, he writes as follows, he discusses the question, why do we say Zman Matan Torah Seinu? It's a bakante inyan. The Gemara says Shavuos come out on Hey or on Vav and on Zayin. When was the Zman Matan Torah Seinu? And he's masber that the inyan of Zman Matan Torah Seinu, as we know, is not just a historical time. It is, according to the Kadmonim teach us, that every year as we come to Kabbalah HaTorah in the world of Neshamas, there's once again the entire Kabbalah HaTorah and the entire Matan Torah, and it's totally b'taharoson shel Yisrael. The way Yidden are metar and mezachach themselves throughout the Yemei HaSefirah, when they finish with that avodah of Hachana, that's when Zman Matan Torah is. It's not totally in any particular date. So he says, Umimoitza hadover. From here, says the Shem Mishmuel, we can see Sha'af Odom she'eine margish b'toyeles HaSefirah v'toharasa. Like most of us, we tried hard, but we don't feel that we worked so hard. We don't feel that we're so much better than we were when we began the Sefirah. Yesh loy lahamin. He should believe with a pure belief. Sheshoyresh nishmasoi nitar behechrich. His neshama has been purified. Why? Me'acha she'anshe knesses hagdoil o sidru lonu betfila zman matan Torah seinu. If the Anshe Knesset said we just say zman matan Torah seinu. As zman matan Torah seinu ein loy mashmois ela hatahara hanal. There cannot be a zman matan Torah seinu unless we became tor through the Yemei HaSefirah. Ha'hechrich loyma, we're forced to say Shahasefirah osaso eshalo. The Sefirah did its pu'ula. The Sefirah did its job on us and lifted us. Al kol ponim, for everybody a different madrega. Lezeh ma'at, lezeh harbe, some in shayresh haneshama, some in shayresh hanefesh, in different levels in the depths of a person's neshama. But it's certainly everybody was zoiche. To know that from Shavuos onward, we have a new daf, we have a new page. Our neshamas have become kodesh, our neshamas have become tor, because we went through the tahara of the Yemei HaSefirah. And this is when we finish the Sefirah, where the Sefirah HaKadoshim teach us that the Sefirah did its pe'ula. But here we are, we still have Erev Shavuos. We still have the last day of Sefirah Sa'oima, and there's a famous word from the Koshnitzer Magid, Ad mi mochros ha-Shabbos ha-Shviyis tisperu chamishim yoim. Until the very last day, tisperu chamishim yoim, we can light up all the 50 days of Sefirah. It means even if a person, the first 48 days of Sefirah, didn't accomplish what he was meant to accomplish, yet on the last day, he can build everything together and he can be zoiche to light up all of the chamishim yoim, all of the days of Sefirah Sa'oima. So the Svarim HaKadoshim are telling us that our neshamas, whether we realize it or not, look very different than they looked about 7 weeks ago. If we could get a glimpse at our neshamas, what would we see? How would they look? They're ready for Kabbalah HaTorah? No, a day before. A chassan, the day before is chasana. No, could you imagine the excitement? Let's take a look at the words of the Ohr HaChaim HaKodesh. It's quite a famous piece of Ohr HaChaim HaKodesh. The Pasuk says, B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim b'yoyim hazeh bo midbar Sinai. They arrived in Midbar Sinai. Then the pasuk says, Vayisu me'refidim, they left Refidim, Vayavoyu midbar Sinai. So the order has been reversed. First you say, Vayisu me'refidim, then they came to Midbar Sinai. Why do we say we first came to Midbar Sinai, then we go back to the story of Vayisu me'refidim? Says the Heilige Or Chaim HaKodesh, because ahava mikalkeles es ashura, when there's love, when there's intense ahava, it overturns the order. Sheliois kihu ze yoim hamakuva leboire. This was the hoped for and long awaited day by the Creator. La Torah, la oilam, la elyoinim, ula tachtoinim, for the malachim, for the srafim, for everybody. Umiyoim habriya, from the first day of creation. Heim yoishvim umitzapim. Everybody was waiting. Mosa Yavoyu B'nei Yisrael Midbar Sinai. When will they arrive at Har Sinai? Lezeh Kishehigiu Shama. When they finally arrived, Loi Otzru Koyach Lesaper Seder Dav. The Torah couldn't go and tell the Seder. The first hat that it was bursting. Kaviyochel. Take if Kodma Haidol. They're announced. They arrived at Midbar Sinai. After we get this Yediyah, now we'll go back and we'll say the Seder. They left their freedom. They arrived at Midbar Sinai. And he says, Allah shin higia choshuk v'nechshak l'choyshik v'choshuk v'somchu shamayim v'oretz. And heaven and earth was besimcha ki zehu tachlis habriya v'tikvasa. This day was the tachlis of the Bria and all of its hope. Choshuk v'nechshak l'choshuk v'choshuk. If we were to see our neshamas, how they look at this point in time, we would see neshamas full of cheshik, full of fire, of longing, of yearning for closeness for the Rebbeinu Shalom. And as the Or Chaim HaKodesh says, it goes both ways. The choshuk v'nechshak, the choshik v'choshuk. The same way we have this longing, this yearning, this cheshik for the Rebbeinu Shalom, so too the Rebbeinu Shalom has this cheshik for us. As the Chafetz Chaim once said, Chafetz Chaim's son once asked him, how do we know where we're holding in Shamayim? We can get a credit report. Are they happy with us in Shamayim and us? He says, it's easy. Chafetz Chaim said, just look at your feelings towards Inyonim Shomaimihim. If by you an Indian Rochni is very chosh, if you're Seder Halimud, you wait for it all day. Person has to say, let's say by night. He works hard the whole day, but he waits and he looks forward to it and he wouldn't miss it. That means in Shamayim, they're waiting and looking forward to it and wouldn't miss it. Because the way you feel about it, so they feel in Shamayim. If a person, for him, Tefillah B'tzibur is very, very important. He wouldn't miss it for anything. So in Shamayim, his Tefillah B'tzibur is tremendously important. If it's sometimes yah, sometimes nish, on Shamayim, sometimes yah, sometimes nish. And the Gilui, the unbelievable Gilus, Vasemis is Mevar, there's the unbelievable Gilu that happened, that we heard the Dvar Hashem. The only time in history that the Rebbeinu Shalom's voice, Kaviyachal, was heard in all of the Bria. Noichi Hashem Elokecha v'lo yelecha. What brought about such a Gilui? Because from the Yidden and the Yidden's Neshamas came out that Chelik HaLekus, which we spoke about last week, as part of the Chelik of Mashiach we all have. On Sunday, we spoke. That we have, that was brought out to such a Gilui. So, Keneged that, the Rebbeinu Shalom revealed himself according to how much we revealed our own Alekus. And in every nivra in the world, the Likus came out, and the Rebbeinu Shalom Koil was Beikeah through all of the Chumrias, and we heard the Dvar Hashem. So Erev Shavuos is a day of intense longing. A day when we have to have a cheshik and a desire for closeness to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Our neshamas are already there. We, in our conscious level, maybe we're not yet massing it. We don't feel it. But that's what's happening in our neshamas. And our avodah in this last day of Sefirah is for us to get in touch with that neshama. And tonight we're going to say Ahavas Olam. Tomorrow we're going to say Ahava Rabbah. We're going to be Mispalel. Avinu of Harachmon, Rachem Oleinu, V'sein B'libeinu Bino, Lahovinu, Lahaski, Lishmoya, Lilmoidu, Lalamed, to pour our hearts out with tefillah. Give us, Taka, the koyach, the cheshik. We're going to say a Birchas HaTorah, V'harev no Hashem, and make it sweet in our mouths, but make the Torah delicious and gishmak. We should have an enjoyment from it. We're sending our children to Cheder, B'fias Amr, our children should have a sweetness, should have an enjoyment, should have a hana from Torah's Hashem. All this This is our avodah. The avodah of preparation for Kabbalah Torah. To be full of cheshik, to be full of longing. Now, where do we get this cheshik from? Where do we get the desire and the yearning for Torah Hashem? Now, there's an interesting thing. The Svarim HaKadoshim tell us that cheshik actually comes from Shavuos itself. The Riyah Kodesh says many Svarim bring the inyan that just like we have a Yom Hadin of Rosh Hashanah and Yom HaKippurim, there's a Yom Hadin for Torah. There's a Yom Hadin on Rochnius. How we are going to experience Torah throughout the year. Our cheshik, our gishmak, our havana, our understanding, our cheshik for learning, our cheshik for davening, our cheshik for mitzvahs. All that is being judged and will be determined on Shavuos. And the Beis Aaron writes us in many ways the pachad of Shavuos should be a bigger pachad than the pachad of Shana Yom Kippur. Because the mishpat on our chelik harochni, whether the Torah is going to be actually sweet for us, whether it's going to be gishmak, whether it's going to be full of cheshik, all that depends on our avodah of Shavuos. So the makar, the source of our cheshik for Torah and for mitzvahs a whole year comes from the matana, the bracha Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us for Shavuos. But where does our Shavuos come from? Our Shavuos comes from our cheshik for it. Das heißt, Shavuos gives us cheshik if we have cheshik for matan Torah. And so the Svarim HaMasber, every yontiv, its name is Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaSukkos, Chag HaShavuos. What does it have to do with the yontiv? Why is it called Chag HaShavuos? Because Shavuos is the Sheva Shabbos, is Tamim Yisrael, Shiva Shavuos Tispaloch. We counted this. We call the yontiv Al Shem the Hachonah, Al Shem the preparation, the 7 weeks that we counted. Oh, what do we have now? We have Shavuos. Our longing, our desire, our cheshik for closeness to the Rebbeinu Shlem, that created this yontiv. That this yontiv is what's going to give us cheshik for a whole year. So we have to tap into receiving this shefa of Rotzoin for Torah Hashem. And the pasuk tells us, Harchev picho v'amal'eyu. It's not totally in our madrega. The Balakeda is masber. Harchev picho v'amal'eyu. When the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to be mashpia, it's not according dafka to the person's madrega. It's according to how much he wants to take from the Rebbeinu Shalom. He gives a mashal, says if you look at a river, sometimes at one spot the river is very deep, some part it's shallow. So a fool thinks that the deeper part is closer to the source of the river and the shallower part is further down. So it has nothing to do with that. Wherever it's dug out deeper underneath. If the earth is dug out deeper underneath, there'll be deeper water. If it's shallow, it's going to be shallow. The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us, Zog the Balakeda, according to how much we open ourselves as a kli to be mekabel this shefa. So our avodah in Erev Shavuos is to be mekayim harchev picha v'amaleyu, to open up ourselves to be mekabel the great hashpoyas on a great level, not on a small level, on a big madrega of rotzon. Ki shocha la'ofa nafshenu, svarim taich nafshenu is miloshen nefesh, miloshen rotzon im yesh es nafshechem. Ki shocha la'ofa nafshenu. Sometimes our ritzonis are so down they're close to the ground. We have to have big ritzonis and big sheifas. If we have big ritzonis and big sheifas, the Kadosh Baruch Hu will give us big shefa. If it's shachal oris nafshenu, Shavuos is coming, very nice. We'll have a nice meal, some nice cheesecake, and we'll go learn a little bit. Then we have very, very small hasogis in Shavuos. The bigger our hasogis and our ritzonis for the shefa of Shavuos, so much more so we will get. And what will we get? We'll get the shefa to be able to have the cheshik and the rotzen for the rest of the year. So just like an Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur, a person has to make a cheshbon HaNefesh, and Elochi takes stock of his life, and he looks at where am I holding in life. On Erev Shavuos, we also have to make a cheshbon HaNefesh. Where are we holding in life? But in which life? In the real life. We're going to daven, so we're going to say, Ki heim chayenu v'oirech yomeinu uvoem nege yomim v'layla. Our life of Torah. Where am I holding in my life of Torah? What is my kesher to Torah? Where am I holding in Yediyas HaTorah? Where am I holding in Shmiras HaZmanim, in Storim in Torah? Where am I holding in acquiring my chelik in Torah? We mentioned on Sunday, we mentioned the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and read you the Lashon Omru Chachmei Ha'emes, the Balei Kabbalah said, Shekol Nefesh Tzricha L'Tikuna, every Nefesh has to come to its Tikkun Lasoik Bepardes, that's in Torah Kefi Mashihi Yechoilo Lahasig V'Leida, according to how much he could accomplish and know. V'chol Mi Sheyochel Lahasig V'Leida Harbe, one who was able to know and accomplish much. V'nis Atzel, he was lazy, V'loi Hisig V'Yod Ela Ma'at, he only learned a little bit. Tzarech Lovoi Begilgul, he has to come back, his Neshama, to this world at sheyasig v'yeda kol ma she'efshel nishmosei lahasig midiyas haTorah. Hein b'shtei halachas, hein b'ramazim udrashes v'soides ki kol ma she'nishmosei yechoyel lahasig v'leida midiyas haTorah. Whatever a person's neshama could accomplish in Torah, zehu tikun hashleimus. That is his tikun. V'yeshelo lehistakeinu lehishtalem b'tzroi rachayim es Hashem. And a neshama cannot come to its complete tikun b'mekoyra shechutz v'misham bilti yediyazu. And that's why Chazal say, Ashrei mi shebo lekan v'talmudoi b'yodoi kedei shlo yitztarech lovoi bilgilgul lo'olam hazeh. So the Rebbeinu Shalom demands of us, our neshamas have a chelik in Torah. That's what it means we say, v'sein chelkeinu b'soirasecho. And on our short trip through this world, we have to gather that and we have to accomplish that. And we have to be koine that chelik in Torah. And on a day like Erev Shavuos, we have to make a cheshbon on nefesh. How close am I to getting that chelik in Torah? That was mine, that was given to me to accomplish on this world. And if I don't have it, do I have a cheshbon to answer for it? Do I have an answer? Will I have an answer for the Bezdin Shel Maila? The Chassam Sofer writes in a drosha, L'chol Adam Yisrael yesh chelkoi b'Torah. V'him u'ein, if he doesn't come and take it, his son will take it, or his einikel will take it, somebody from his family. We have a pasuk, V'ani zois berisi lo yamushim mipich b'zarach b'zera zaracha me'ata v'adam. There's a haftocha shelo yitzuye shetehei keser Torah nitel mi mishpach achas mi Yisrael. There cannot be such a thing that the keser Torah is taken from any family in Klal Yisrael me'ata v'adoilam. And that's why on Shavuos Simchas Kol Yisrael is shava b'chag HaShavuos, because everybody, every mishpach in Klal, there's a certain Torah that comes out in Keser Torah, and if a person doesn't take it for himself, it will go on in his descendants, but it's not going to be lost. So Mela, it's a simcha for all of Klal Yisrael, for the Shefaf Torah that's being given to us. But we have to take stock of our life. Am I doing what I can? The Torah, the Eibush doesn't come betruni and briyos. The Eibush doesn't come to us to demand of us things that we cannot do. But what we can do is demanded of us. And for that we're going to have to answer. I saw a beautiful word from Reb Shamshon Pincus Zatzal. He was masbeh this nekuda. He says, no person thinks, my chelik in Torah, how will I ever accomplish my chelik in Torah? They tell the story of Naftali Trop was standing outside the Chafetz Chaim's room with another goyin, and they were listening to the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim used to also often make such plays, describing his din in Bezdin Shel Maila, and he was in his room on his own, and they're saying, you hear the Chafetz Chaim saying, Yisrael Meir, start saying Masech the Brachas. Yisrael Meir, start saying Masech the Shabbos, start saying Masech the Erev. One of the two ran away, couldn't even stay, it was such a pachad. Then finally here's the Chafetz Chaim saying, Yisrael Meir, but now you're still alive, go and learn it. So we're going to come up to Shemaim, there's going to be a faher. The chaflo fellow, what are we going to do? How are we going to pass the faher on Gans Shas? They're going to ask us Chumash, Mishnayos, and Shas. What are we going to do? So Shamshon Pincus said a moiridik word. He said over a Maisa, the Beis Halevi once came to a certain inn. In the middle of the night, he was traveling on his own. And he knocked on the door, it was the middle of the night, and the innkeeper didn't know who he was, and he wasn't too happy to take a guest. He just about opened the door. He wouldn't give him a room, wouldn't give him any food. He made him sleep next to the fireplace. An hour later, suddenly there's a big rash outside. And what happened? There was a big Rebbe, the Kaiden of a Rebbe, a big tzaddik, and he had come accompanied by his Chassidim, and he came to this inn, and the owner opened the door, and he saw the Kaiden of a Rebbe with the Chassidim. He turned on all the lights, and he was mechaber him, and he brought him in, and he started preparing a meal. Says to mechaber the Rebbe, and Kaiden of a Rebbe saw somebody lying there next to the fireplace. He says, Brisker of the Beis Halevi. he brought him to the tish, he brought him to the head of the table, and the innkeeper could imagine what his busha was, and he says, "Oh, brisket Rav." I didn't know it was the brisket Rav. I never would have treated you so differently. So Rabbi Levi said, "Azoi." He said, it says by the Ma'aseh of Shechem v'Dino, they said, "Ki nevolo osaso b'Yisrael lishka ves bas Yaakov v'chein lo yeyose." Why do we add on the v'chein lo yeyose? What he says, nevolo osaso b'Yisrael. He says, Rashi answers the kasha. Rashi says that the Umas Ha'olam were Gedurim Mei Aroyas. They be'emes were Nizir and Gili Arayas. So I meant to say like this. The emes is, he could have tainted the Volosol, we didn't know it was Bas Yankov. Shem didn't know it was Bas Yankov. But the taina is, V'chein lo yayose, this is something you don't do even to somebody who's not Bas Yankov. And if you did it, you're responsible, Ki'ilu, you understood that it was Bas Yankov. He said, if the pshat is that you're allowed to greet in the middle of the night any yid like you greeted me, just you can't do it to Yoshe Bey, you can't do it to the Briskerov. No, see, you didn't know it was the Briskerov. But this is the way you're not allowed to treat any yid like this. If this is the way you treat it, Stama yid, you're achroy for treating the Briskerov this way. So Rav Shabbat set up in Ageya, he was leaving once, he remember he was a boch in Beis HaTalmud, and he left second Seder at 5 to 7. The Seder was over at 7 o'clock. And one of the Rosh Yeshivas said to him, "Well, where are you going?" He said, it's already 5 to 7. He says, no. He says, no. He looks at his watch and says, it's only 10 to 7. So he says, no, it's 5 to 7. That's what he told him over this story. He says, if at 5 to 7 you're allowed to leave, no. So you made a mistake. You thought it's really 10 to 7. You thought it was 5 to 7. But even at 5 to 7, you're not allowed to leave. You're responsible for leaving at 10 to 7. We're going to come to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to say, what's with Ka'at Torah Kula? Yid's Mechuyev to know. So was I the Ktsoyis? Was I the Pnei Yeshua? Was I the Chaim Briske? How could I have accomplished all of that? They'll say, fine. But what could you have accomplished? What were you able to? If a person was able to answer what I could have done according to my seichel, according to my koichas hanefesh, according to my matziv, let's say, oh, givaldik. But if a person didn't even do what he was able to do, then there's going to be a taina. Why didn't he know brachas and Shabbos and all these things? Mention taina of the mensch of alles. So when we are misbeinen in our chiyuv of achieving and accomplishing our chelik in Torah, and we realize and we think how far we are from that, and we're mispalel to the Rebbeinu Shalom b'sein chelkeinu b'soyrosech, and our hearts become full of gaguim, full of longing, full of desire, full of cheshik. That gives us chizuk, that brings into us ratan, that creates for us a Yom Tov of Shavuos. When we think and we honestly take stock of ourselves, we're going to say, Ahavas oilam amcha beisal alkein Hashem Elokeinu b'shochveinu uvkumeinu nosiach b'chukecho. Morning and night I talk in your Torah. I'm going to think, do I actually do that? What do I talk about in the morning? What do I talk about at night? Am I talking nosiach b'chukecho? V'nismach b'divrei salmut Torah secha mitzvah. Is that what brings me simcha? I have to look at myself honestly. Can I say that in the time that I do have, I'm using it properly? But if not, Cholila, as the Chofetz Chaim says, on Torah is bitter and finster of Eibig. If a person doesn't, is not zoiche to limud Torah. And he could have. He was misatzel, he didn't use his koiches, it's bitter and dark, lenetzach nitzochim. So if we want to have a cheshik for Torah, we're misgageya for Torah, and we want to bring more Torah into our lives, there's a few things we have to understand. The first thing, we need to know what is Torah. What is this Torah that who is the kala that we're getting married to in 24 hours from now? Who is it? What do we know about this Torah? Let's take a small marshal. Let's take the Vilna Gaon. Reb Chaim Volozhin, the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon, writes that once on the first day of Pesach, he and another Talmud noticed the Gaon wasn't at his usual level of Simchas Yontiv. And they went over, they asked the Rebbe, why are you not in such a perfect level of Simcha as usual? So he said that night he had a gilui through the Shem and Beis of many unbelievable pshatim in the 3 words, Alu Zeh Banegev. So then this morning I was trying to rearrange it in my mind, and I was maharer, I thought about it before Birchas HaTorah, and the Gaon L'Shitasa who holds that, one may not even think in Torah before Birchas HaTorah. And I forgot it, so I'm very bitzar. So they gave him a bracha, the Rebbe should be zoiche, his Aveda should come back to him. And later they saw him in a Moira de Kasimchi, says it was returned to him. And there were 2,260 pshatim in the Pasuk Alu Zeba Negev. And with one of them, with one pshat, I know the soidus of Bria Shemayim Ba'aretz, and I could show the tachlis and kavon of every single aver in the Guf HaAdam. No, Rabbi Ephraim Wachsman writes in the Akdama to Sefirah Tznius, says the Goyin had Gili Eliyahu, say the Goyin learned Bechavrusa with Yankov Avinu. There were Magidim, there were Malachim from Shemayim who came to learn with him to teach him Torah, but he would send them away because he wanted to learn with his own Yegiyah. From one of the Talmidei Hagroin, Rabbi Avraham Simcha Me'amsitzlov, he writes, Ro'isi b'ksav yad kodshay, I saw in the Goyin's handwriting, Omar li Eliyahu hanovi zochel atoiva, Pirush Negemar Ne'erev and Daf Yud Gimel, Eilev Elidir and Kim Chaim. The Goyin writes, Eliyahu hanovi told me this pshat. In the Sefer Hadras Kodesh, Rabbi Shlomo Mitolchin, he also writes, on a different pasuk, Omer Lashem Machsim Tzudasi, Ze Omar li Horav, this the Rebbe, the Goyin told me, B'Shem Yankov Avinu. And so writes the Pas HaShulchan in the Akdama that a certain shot he brings that he heard from the Goyin, Shegilu lo Yankov Avinu. They asked Reb Chaim Volozhin if the Goyin is so great. So the Goyin must have been like an Amoire. And Reb Chaim Volozhin, whose harotze and pachad from his Rebbe was so extraordinary that he said it's a bezoy and anybody would call me a Talmud of the Goyin. How can you call me a Talmud of the Goyin? And when someone said the Goyin, his Rebbe was like an Amoire, he jumped up and he said, what, like an Amoire? If the Goyin would live for 2,000 years, he wouldn't be Magia to the Karsule Raglov of an Amoire. Maybe Ulai Kiramban, maybe would be like a Rishon like the Ramban. So who was the Ramban? So Reb Chaim Vital brings B'Shem the Ari HaKodesh. On the Sefer Ramban al HaTorah, the Ari writes, there's nobody in this door who understands the Ramban. The Chidah, when he writes about the Ramban al Ashas, the Ramban that we heard, that we learn in all the yeshivas, he writes, Ubesvarad, in Spain, when the Talmidim learned Ramban, Yotzu Lahava, flames came out of their mouths when they would be discussing Ramban. It brings a tshuva and Riyav and Leiv. He writes the Loshen Besvarad Hama'ainen Shebechabura Yotzu Mipihen Zekukin Shel Eish. Rods of fire came out of their mouths when they were learning Ramban. The Kashtila Goin, the Ri Kanfantoim, who the Gedolei Doirov wrote on him that Rias Ponav was like Rias Pnei Ashchine. He writes you have to be medagdik in the Ramban because there's not one extra letter in the whole Sefer. No, what does the Ramban write about the Rishonim, about the Ravid, just 2 generations before him? So in the Shita Mekubetzes and Ksubas Daf Nundalad brings, the Ramban writes, even though this pshat of the Ravid is not mechuver, I don't understand it properly, Roshenu tachas kapois ragle Rishonim. Our heads are underneath the feet of the Rishonim. And what the Ramban writes about Reb Shira Goin, and the Chochmas HaParatz, the Chochmas HaSirtutim, Hafla of a fellow. No, so if that's a Goin, and that's a Rishon, what's an Amoire? What does it mean we say Omar Rova? What does it mean we say Omar Abaya? Abaya said, do we have a shaykhs? Do we know what it means? And what is a Tana? Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenis, who was the Rebbe of Rabbi Akiva and the Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he writes, the Gemara brings him Sechta Sanhedrin. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenis said, Harbe Torah lo madati v'harbe Torah li madati. I learned much Torah from my Rebbeim and I taught to my Talmidim. What I took from my Rebbeim was like a dog who licks from the ocean. That's how little I took of their Chochmah. And what I gave over to my Talmidim was like an eyedropper that you take a little drop. So, how big was his Rebbe and how big was his Rebbe? And who was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? The Gemara in Sukkah says, to 80 Talmidim of Hillel HaZak and Rabbi Yonasan ben Azil was the biggest, and the smallest one was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was Lohiniach, Mikra, Mishnah, Gemara, Alochas, Vagodas, the Dukei Torah, the say Seifen, Kalin, Chamurim, Gzeir Shavas, Tekuvas, Gematrios, Sichas Malachi Ashores, the Sichas, the column, the language of the plants, the Sichas Shadim, Maisa Markova, whatever. That was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. That's the Torah that we, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Omer Rabbi Akiva, Omer Rabbi Tarf, and that's what we learn, that's what we touch. When do we touch it? With every single word. Bakant the Goin, Shnois Eliyom Masechta Peah. That it says Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam is for every single word of Torah.
And if one learns one daf with his hundreds of words, he has hundreds of mitzvahs that each one is shokul keneged kol mitzvah shebetayre, keneged kulam. In Sefirah Shiurim, we know if somebody missed one night of Sefirah, he's very tzibrocha. Comes Shavuos, he didn't count Sefirah b'shleimus. Hagam, Sefirah Shiurim b'zmanazeh kemat lot moiser shoynim mitzvah derabanan. And if one misses a night according to many Rishonim, you could still be yoy to the mitzvah with the other nights. And we take account the other nights without a bracha, we're choishes for those shittas. But person feels very bad if he didn't count the whole Sefirah. Yeah, there are people who go many Shabbos nebuch and they daven late and they miss man krishma, which is the Reise. And they can go sometimes week after week making his man krishma. It doesn't bother them as much as it bothers them missing a night of Sefirah. Why is that? It's poshut. Because by Sefirah he feels the inyan that it's part of a koyma shlema. I missed one thing, I didn't just miss a day. I messed up the whole thing b'shleimus. Mr. Krishma, no, next week I'll get it. This is not all connected. I didn't blow it. I miss, even though that Haver is much, but there's a heritage by a person. And that's be'emes what the Yetzer Hara does. L'tava yevakesh nifrod. He takes away from us that understanding that everything is a koyma shalema. The Maral is mazbe basara mamoris nivra oilom. That Eser is the union of kiskalus. That everything is connected. L'tayv yavakesh nivra. The Yetzer Hara talks us into, this is just an isolated incident. It doesn't have a big effect. It's not all connected and makusha and all the oilomas. But in Sefirah, where we see it clearly, we realize that something is not just a particle. It's part of a whole. And a small thing has an effect on a shleimus. It bothers us very much. Torah, we know as lamala min hazman. A word of Torah, that's why it says, Chazal say Shavuos can come out, hey, vav, zayin, svaram amazbe, because the yont of a mountain Torah cannot be connected, can't be bound by time. We live in a world of time. But olam haba, what does it mean it's lamala min hazman? It means that every word, not just a word of Torah, every word of Torah, every ois of Torah is the whole Torah, and it's all of time. It's all of our hoiv of a year. It's eternity. It's Ein Sof. It's not just a piece, a particle of existence, this word of Torah. It's the entire Shleimus Habriya in Zman, in Nefesh, and Mokoim. And if I kind a word of Torah, I conquered the world. And if I'm mevatel a word of Torah, I was mevatel an oilam mole. It's endless and it's infinite. The kedusha of one letter of Torah that we have the schus to learn. And whether we understand it, lo'im koyanat, the Torah was given to us l'fi our seichel. In every generation, we harv and try to understand the Torah to the best of our abilities, and we're connected to this entire shleimus of Torah. The power of a word of Torah, of a word of a toisvis. There's a Yidin Yerushalayim of Nuta Freund told over a mice, he was once walking with the Chazon Ish, and while they were walking, the Chazon Ish said, the Chassam Sofer could have overturned the whole world with one toisvis. Aber mit tut nicht azoi. He didn't do it because it's just not the way. But if he wanted, he could have built the world or destroyed the world with the power, with the energy that there is in one toisvis. So if we have a little bit of a hasaga what Torah is, what a pasuk chumash is, what a mishnah is, what a blat gemara is. So we start to have a chashivas for Torah. And we don't want to waste our time. And we want to do the best we can to get more and more. And we realize that this takes precedence over anything else that we have to do. And we wait and we long till we get to the moment we can put our tirdas aside and get back to being koine, this awesome kedusha of Torah. There was a famous goyin who lived in Yerushalayim, the Torah's Chesed. He was the Lubliner Rav. He settled later in Yerushalayim. Mamish Kol Rozloi, honestly, they wrote about him. I think the Malbim wrote about him when he was a young bocher. That he never seen such a goyin in all his life. And he told the Mises, as they were so poor in his house, they owned nothing. There was one treasured thing they had in the house. They had a Sefer Yichus that went back to David HaMelech. It was a parchment that showed all the generations, and that was their prized possession in the family. He says one day he was looking through the letter that had the whole Seder HaYichus. The next day it was gone. His mother tore it up. She said, if that's taking you away from your limud HaTorah, I don't want it in the house. That was Amol, the Hasaga, the Chashivas, how precious Torah and time for Torah was. Rabbi Yashiv soll sein gesund und stark. Had a Rebbetzin, Oleh HaSholem, who was Meister Nefesh her whole life for his Torah. They were Megadla, I think it was 10 children, 11 children in a one-bedroom apartment in Mea She'arim. She didn't let him for a moment worry about anything in Olam Hazeh. Say one of the children was once in an accident. She wouldn't tell him about it until the child was back from the hospital. Everything was fine. So she shouldn't even have to have a daig and take him away from his learning. When Rebbetzin Elyashiv was holding by Yitzias Neshama, Rabbi Yashiv came to her bedside to be there at the moment of Ptira. And she saw him coming into the room and she said, go back to learn. I don't want you here. I don't need you here. And Rabbi Yashiv went back to his shir and they came in later, 15 minutes later, they told him that the Rebbetzin was nifta. Now you can imagine, Rebbetzin Elyashiv, who one certainly can say gave away her life for her husband's Torah, who did everything she could that he should become the Goyen and the Poisek Ador that he is, so sein gesund und stark bis Mashiach. Certainly, everyone would have understood that she's entitled, that Yitzias Neshama, she should have this Godel standing there. But she didn't want that, because I could have some more Torah. And he understood it too. Avada. For regular people, it could be it would be an achzorius. But when you're living in their world, in the world where really we're margish what Torah means, that's so much more, it's so much more giving away to, it's so much more of a gift. That's the world, that's the Eirech in the lives of Talmidei Chachamim. There was a Yid, a very, very choshev Rav and Askin, who accomplished extraordinary things for Klal Yisrael. And he once went to visit the Chazon Ish. And he was discussing with the Chazon Ish his various activities and his accomplishment. The Chazon Ish said, mamish, moiridik, unbelievable, the things that you've done for the Klal, half of a fella. But I want you to just go take a look in the next room. There's a younger man sitting there. Take a look at him. This is my nephew, Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. Take a look at him. Because everything that you've accomplished still doesn't compare to what he's doing. Then take a look at him now. Because who knows in the Olam HaElyon who's going to be able to see him. So take a good look at him now. So if we understand we have a halacha for Torah, we are machshav it. And we want more of it. And we want people around us. We want our mishpachas to have it. We want it to give to it. We want to be marzik. We want to be mechazik it. And if we have a chashivas to Torah, we come to the next step. We come to ahavas HaTorah. We love Torah's Hashem. We love Talmidei Chachamim. We love those who are oisik in Torah, who are connected to Torah. We have an ahava to them. There's a story told when the Ktsois HaChoishen wrote his chibah, the Heilige Ktsois, and he was then an unknown young Talmud Chacham, and he came, I think the Yeshuas Yankov was the Rav, either in Lemberg or Lvov, I don't remember, and he came to get a haskama from the Yeshuas Yankov, and he brought him the Ksav Yad, and the Yeshuas Yankov says, okay, go, I have to look it over, you should find yourself a place to sleep, and he found some inn, some place to sleep there in the town, and the Yeshuas Yankov took the Ksav Yad to look at it. The next morning, the Ktsois wakes up and he hears music in the streets. And he looks out the window and there are musicians playing and there's a crowd and they're holding a chuppah and the Yeshuas Yankov is holding the Ksav Yad of the Ktsois HaChoishen and he's dancing under the chuppah with tears streaming down his face towards the place where the Ktsois HaChoishen was sleeping. Ahavas HaTorah. The Yeshuas Yankov saw that there was a piece of Mesiras HaTorah, there was a Yetzirah, that you're not going to harve in Atzav Kol HaDoros, a Ktsois. And his simcha and his ahava was so intense he could only express it by dancing in the street from joy.
There was some Bochrim who on their way to yeshiva, I forgot which one of the yeshivas in the Litta, was near the town of Dvinsk. And there were Bochrim would, instead of going to yeshiva, there was an Indian, there were two or three Bochrim would go for his man to learn B'chavrusa with the Yer Sameach. And this story was told over by one of, I think Rav Baxt from Detroit told it over from his uncle who had the schus to spend the winter learning with the Yer Sameach, and said they were sitting and learning, they came to a difficult place, they didn't know Pshat. And the Yer Sameach said, let's go mispal, let's daven. Let's daven HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us a Havas HaTorah. He said, Rebbe, why shouldn't we just daven the Baruch Shem should tell us Pshat in the Toisus? Why do we have to daven for a Havas HaTorah? He said, I'll tell you. He says, imagine, he says, sometimes you have a little baby is given over to a babysitter, and the baby's crying, and nobody knows what the baby wants. Try to give him a bottle, you try to give him some food, anything, you pick him up, you shake him, nothing happens. The mother walks in 1 second she knows what the baby wants, and she calms the baby down. Says, what's the Pshat? Because when you love someone very much, you understand what that person is saying to you. If we have proper Ahavas HaTorah, we understand what the Torah is talking to us. We understand what the Torah is telling us. If we want to understand the Torah, we need to be mispal the Rebbeinu Shalom should give to us Ahavas HaTorah. Ahavas HaTorah means, like there was a Meiser of Aaron Mitavrig when the great Goyne Litter, who there was a curfew when they were under Russian occupation, and you weren't allowed to have any lights on because they said you would be signaling the enemy. And he was harving in a Rambam, and he had a candle on, and the soldiers caught him, and they brought him out to be shot. And as they were about to kill him, he said, could you please give me 15 more minutes to live? I almost have shot on the Rambam. Now we are so far removed, but we should at least be on the Madrega to understand what he felt. To liga, sometimes to have the schus to liga in a sugya once and know what it feels like. If I just had 15 minutes to get pshat, I would understand what he felt. Ahavas HaTorah. The Sam Sof in his final moments of life, when his Talmidim and his children were gathered, he said, just say words of Torah, say Mishnayos, say Gemara, just say words of Torah, that's all I want to hear. There was a Yid in Yerushalayim, Rabbi Yosef Kastel, he was a Zokan, I remember him noch. He was a Slonim Chosid, a very old man, and he had traveled, he had seen Gedolei Olam, and Bacham used to come and he used to tell over who from the Gedolim that he saw. And once he told over that he heard from the Divrei Shmuel, from the Slonim Rebbe, who knew the Beis HaLevi. And he said the Beis HaLevi once stood for 6 hours just saying over and over again, Omar Abaye, Omar Abaye. For no other reason that he was so overcome with Ahava, he couldn't continue. He couldn't rise sich from the Omar Abaye. This is Ahavas HaTorah. That is really in our neshamas. And if we're zoiche to Ahavas HaTorah, through understanding the chashivas of Torah, through understanding what Torah can do for us, then we could be zoiche to go into a Gan Eden of Torah. The Chazon Ish writes when he describes a Talmud Chacham hoilich bein anoshim v'nidme la'odam haroye be'einenu keben odam. He looks like just a regular person, but be'emes is who kimalach hagor in b'nei semusa. It's like a malach strolling about between regular people. V'chai chaye yatzilus umerumam al kol beracho sehila. There was a Yid who lived in Yerushalayim. Rab Mordechai Leib, his name was. He was a moirudik mas, but he lived in Sharei Chesed. They say when the Bochum would be coming home from yeshiva, learning late at night, he was going to start his day. He'd say, oh, you're ending, I'm just starting. And he had storim, so he began with Mishnayos, then Gemara, then Ian, then Bekiyas, then he went into Kabbalah, into Drush. His day was full of Limud Torah. He had 12 children, he lost 11 of them b'chayav. He had one son who survived, and Rishim Betzal, he's a Melamed in Yerushalayim. And somebody asked him, how are you able to live?
such Torah, such Yisurin that he went through besides the Aniyas and the Dachkis. Says, how could you walk around with such Tsar? He said, Tsar, ich wasch mich in Honig a ganze Tag. I'm bathing in honey all day. Because he's living in a different world. In the world of Abaye V'Rav, in the world of Tosfos, in the world of the Rishonim, in the world of the Achronim. That's the Gan Eden. That's there when a person goes into the world of Limud HaTorah, whatever it is. And that's the way one has to enter Torah, even if his Torah is only for an hour a day. But when he's there, he has to be there, washing himself, bathing in honey. And then he doesn't eat anything. There was once a very wealthy man who came to Yerushalayim, and the Askanim wanted him to give a donation to the Yishuv. They brought him into the Yerushalayim Rav to Shmuel Salant. And he was just about to begin his meeting, and a young man walked in, and Shmuel Salant turned away from this wealthy man, and he went into a lengthy discussion with this young man. Meantime, the fellow got very insulted, and he walked away. He says, I came here for a visit with the Yerushalayim Rav, and he talks to this fellow. So the Askanim felt that they had lost a golden opportunity. They were able to get a donation, and he was insulted. So a group went down to the hotel where he was standing. They said, we want to show you something. I want to take you somewhere. I want to show you who that young man was. And they take him to an alley in Mea Shearim, and there's a basement under the ground. There's a little bit of a window sticking out, and he says, go look into that window. It was about supper time. And he sees this fellow, this young man, is sitting at his table, and around the table are about 7 or 8 children, and there's a little plate full of olive oil, and there's a few pieces of bread, and they're dipping the bread into the oil and giving each child a piece of bread. And that was supper. After supper, he gives out Sidurim, and all together they begin to bench with a moiridik ne'imah, singing the benching, all of them together with such a simcha. It was like the whole basement was lit up. After benching, each one of the children took out a different sefer. The older one took out a Gemara, the next one a Mishnayos, the next one a Chumash, till the last, the youngest one took out Aleph Beis, and they all start learning off from Koil. He's saying the Gemara, he's saying Aleph Beis, Gimel Daled, and this is for an hour and a half. He's standing and he's watching. He never saw such a sight in his life. And then the tiny one with the Aleph Beis fell asleep, and the father got up and he took him, he put him in one corner of the room and he covered him over. The next one fell asleep, he put him in another corner, until they all fell asleep. And they were all put in different corners of the room, and the father was sitting and learning mamash like he was in Shemaim. And this Gvir was sitting looking in that window transfixed. He never saw such a thing. The next day he went to Shmuel Salant, and he said, I saw something, I can't believe such a thing could exist. I want to have the schus to support this man. I want to help him out. He should be able to have some sort of a life. So Shmuel Salant started laughing. You want to help him? Look, I'll try, I'll ask him. So he called the young man. He said, there's a Yid who wants to help you out. Help me out? What am I missing? I have everything I need. Life couldn't be more beautiful. I'm living in Gan Eden. The world of Torah Hashem. And we have to, even though it sounds like madregas, but in a small way we can attach ourselves to such madregas. Rabban used to tell about his father, Reb Shnei Zalman. So his father was a soicher in materials and textiles. And there was a time when that business was terribly, terribly down, and he had no parnosa. And he had a seder before davening, it was a few hours. And just during that time there was a seder, somebody came, a very big buyer, wanted to buy a huge amount of cloth from him. And his wife, his Rebbetzin, came knocking on the door, and she said, if somebody wants to buy it, he said, I'm sorry, if you can wait till after my seder, fine. If not, he should, the Rebbe will give me parnasa otherwise. And he would not come out. Because he knew in the time that he had to learn, that time I'm in a different world. And the children absorbed that. And they saw that. And they saw what the chashivas of Torah was. There was a Yid, Reb David the Blinder, he was called. He lived in Brisk. He was called Reb David the Blind. He was a Malamed. Why was he called Reb David the Blind Man? He was such a Kaddish, whenever he walked in the streets, he would walk with his eyes closed. Didn't want to see a Rio Asur. So they called him the Blind Reb David. And he had a cheder where he learned with children.
And he was a very sharp Yid. Every Friday he would ask a kasha and send the boys home. They had to come back with the teretz, and whoever got a teretz would get up as 3 kopecks. So once Rabbi Ephraim was a little boy, and he sent him home with a kasha, and he asked his father, the Beis Halevi, and he came in with the teretz. He said, for that teretz, your father earns 10 rubles a month. For that teretz, for that type of salary, you should give a better teretz. So he was a sharp man. Al Kolponim, when the Gezeira Nebuch of the Cantonisten came, when the Russian government was kidnapping Jewish children off the streets, it was a danger to get together, but he kept going. He had a cheder, and he would hide, and they would learn together, and anybody saw a policeman coming, they would run. And one day there was one of these policemen looking for Jewish children pass by, and he hears the koil hatoy, he realizes there's a cheder here, and he runs in, and he tries to grab one of the children. David went over and gave him a smack in the face. And the fellow ran out. And versteht sich, it was a bekernish in the stott, was a chutzpah. Smacking a soldier of the Tsar was considered an insult to the Tsar, and they had to use all sorts of protection to free him, to get him out of trouble. Eventually they got him out of trouble. And the Beis Halevi called him, said, I don't understand, Reb David, where did you take the chutzpah to do such a thing? You weren't afraid? He said, what chutzpah? We were middle of a toysvus, he had a chutzpah to disturb, I smacked him. They say Reb David's Einikel once came to the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim said, you're an Einikel of David al-Blinde. That smack that he gave to the Russian soldier will stand for his Einikel until Mashiach, until the Zman of Mashiach. But the musig, to realize that even though we live in a world of tirdus, but when we're in Torah, we're in a different world. We enter a different realm, and all of us could have a shaykhis to that, but it demands a certain rikus hamachshava, a certain dedication in the time that our kriyas item l'Torah is. And we have to be prepared to start. And Erev Shavuos is a time to make a cheshbon hanefesh where we're holding. And we have to realize, avada, everybody wants to learn more, needs to find more time to be koine more Torah. And it's going to be difficult. It's always difficult. It's a the geword from the Sefirah Shiurim. Sefirah Shiurim says that the churban came because lo baruchu b'Torah tchila. What do you mean lo baruchu b'Torah tchila? It says, because kol haschol is koshes. In the beginning, everything is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because we only have a hano and we see ourselves accomplishing. In the beginning, we're not yet accomplishing, we don't have a hano. When one starts learning, it's difficult. He doesn't yet see the peiros. He doesn't have a chashivas. Lo baruchu b'Torah tchila. They didn't understand to be mevarach on Torah, even when it's not geshmak, even when it's batchila, when it's a madreg of kol hascholos. When we're just starting and things go difficult and this tirdus, we have to be machshiv that. A moiridik loshen. So a loshen from Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshitz, he writes like this: Im Tekef Yaschil. Somebody begins. Even though in the beginning it's difficult. The Yetzirah will come against a person with an army. Aval lo yiro liboy bezois. No, the yiro bezois yehei batuach. Ki achriso yizge moed. V'yetzahara yehopech letoiv. His yetzahara will turn into toiv. V'yateva guf murgel la'avodas Hashem. His guf will eventually become rogel la'avodas Hashem. Ki ilu hutfa boy mecheik. As if he was created, he was born with that teva. We all know masmidim. We know people who love to learn, and sometimes it's so difficult. I sit and people say many times, I love the Torah until it comes to learning it, then I don't love it anymore. It's difficult. It's machbar on me. My head is running. It takes time for a person to develop that cherus, that his true enjoyment and his pleasure in life. He's on the madrega to takif, to feel a pleasure. But if we have taka the tshuka, and we have the cheshik, and we're mispala to the Rebbeinu Shalom, tshuka is reality. That's what we spoke about on Sunday. The madrega of David HaMelech, with the midah of Malchus, we said over from Reb Tzaddik. The Reb Tzaddik says the nisayon of David HaMelech was in cheshik, that he had tremendous cheshik, and yet he couldn't get to the chelek halamaisa. Says David wanted to build the Beis Hamikdash. He had an unbelievable design. They said, no, it won't be built in your days. And that cheshik was so powerful until from the cheshik itself was considered as if he had done the Maisa. That's the madrega of David HaMelech. What could we give to the Rebbeinu Shalom?
We can give him our cheshik, our longing, our wish. And that longing will turn into lamaisa. Somebody told me this week, unbelievable maisa. There's a Rav here, the Rav in the Satmar Kehillah in Monsey, Rav Halberstam, was on a trip now to the Ukraine. And there was a Yid from Manchester, was a Moyle, who goes around in these different cities in Russia, and he does brisin. And he asked him, Rav Halberstam asked him, what Mesiras Nefesh he's seen in Russia. He says, I'll tell you, there's one thing I saw that I just can't get out of my mind. So they had to go to a very, very far-off city, a place that's completely off the beaten track, and there's many Yidden who live there, but it's so difficult. The Yiddishkeit there is mamash, there's nothing. Had to do a bris there, and for some reason he came into the shul, and I come into the shul, and I see there's a crowd of people there. And I asked them, when are you davening? He said, davening? What? We don't know how to daven. What's davening? So what do you mean, what's davening? So, what are you doing here? They said, look, there's two things. There's coming to shul, and there's davening. We don't know how to daven. Doesn't mean we're not going to come to shul. So the whole olam comes together 3 times a day in shul and stares at the walls, wishing they knew how to daven. That's Midas HaMalchus. That's the Isgaber Koari we spoke about. I wish I could know more. I wish I could learn more. I wish I had more time. I wish I had more menuchas hanefesh. That's a ma'aseh by the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants that cheshek and that rotzoin. The Skelener Rebbe Zatzal, during one of the many times he was in prison under the communist authorities, once they were interrogating him, they threw him into a pit full of foul water, just his head sticking out. They were smacking him back and forth. He should reveal names of people who were helping him in his Avodas HaKodesh. And they took away his yarmulke, and it was Rosh Hashanah. He was left with nothing. He was in this pit without a marze, without a shofar, without a yarmulke. And it was that time when he realized, I think I once said over the word here, what's pshat you say in Baruch Shama, Baruch Goizer u Mekayim? So the Rebbeinu Shalom makes a gezeir, he's Mekayim. Of course he's Mekayim. He says, Baruch Goizer u Mekayim. If the Eibishter makes a gezeir on a person, he's Mekayim. He's Mekayim the person. He gives him the strength to be oimed in the gezeir. And standing there on that Rosh Hashanah, he had nothing. He composed the niggin. He composed the niggin to the words of Nichsefa v'gam kolso nafshi lechatzres Hashem. My soul is koisif, is yearning, is segeit ois lechatzres Hashem. Rebbeinu Shalom, I have no marzer, I have no shofar. I can't blow shofar. Libi, you was sorry. Yeranenu, take my rots and take my tshuke, take my kisuf. My longing. That's what we can bring to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And if we have the proper cheshik, we'll have the siyata d'shmaya. And the cheshik will come from Shavuos. Shavuos is when we get the bracha of Ratz, and we get the bracha of Tshuka. That's what Kabbalah Torah was all about. There's a mishpacha in Yerushalayim, a very great Talmidei Chachamim. And the story is told about their father. Rabbi Ephraim Wachsman once was at a chasana, and for whatever reason, it was a terrible story, the chassan didn't show up to the chasana. He backed out, and the kala was there already, and there's no chassan. It was a terrible bezoyin. Rabbi Ephraim Wachsman went over, there was a table of bachrim, of chaverim, and he said, if there's anybody who's prepared to go to the chuppah right now, I'm aftiach him will have bonim talmidei chachamim. There shouldn't be a bezoyin for a Bas Yisrael. So there was one boy, he was about 13, 14 years old. He said, Rebbe, I'm ready. They got him a streimel and a bekishe, and they sent him to the chuppah. And he was zoiche to Megadol, one of the shenste mishpachas, and Gedol talmidei chachamim b'Shabbat Yerushalayim. No, go tell somebody today to get married on 24 hours notice.
Hard to find. If I'm telling you it's a good shidduch, it's perfect, just go. Just go. I gotta order a hall, gotta find a band, gotta find invitations, many things to take care of. I can't just go to the chuppah. But that's what we're all planning on doing. 24 hours from now, we're going to the chuppah with the Torah. Maimed Sinai, Timsois Chosan Al Kalo. What could we do in the next 24 hours to make ourselves ready for Kabbalah HaTorah? We're talking about our learning, and avada, we all want to steig, and we all want to add, and be moisif koyach. There's important nekuda, and maybe this one nekuda we could focus our avodah for Erev Shavuos, preparing ourselves for the chasana. There's two types of learning. There's learning with a Kabbalah's oil, and there's learning without a Kabbalah's oil. Sometimes learns, when I can, and when I feel like, and when I want, I'll learn. But proper limud haTorah, the Smak writes, Ki schoroi kofel umekupol, ki shu oise b'shvil oil adoinov hamutal olov, yoiser harbe me'im hoyoloivet ki flying beli oil ki shu ponim. The schar for limud haTorah is if I have an oil, I have a yoke upon me, I know I have to accomplish so much. I have to be here this and this time. I have a chavrusa who's tough, who doesn't let me get away with skipping a seder for every little excuse that I have. I have a Kabbalah, I have a cheshbon, what I want to accomplish, where I want to be. That type of learning, people don't want to be a Kabbalah that. I want to learn, but without commitment. I don't want to be pinned down. I want to still have my freedom. And because of that, you know why that's so? It's a Tosfos. Tosfos writes on the Gemara, it says, Godel ha-mitzvah ba'oisa, misha eina mitzvah ba'oisa. It's harder to be mekayim mitzvah when we're mitzvah than when we're not mitzvah. On a volunteer basis, we're ready to do a lot of things. Because there's not the resistance. When somebody is telling me what to do, I have to do, so my anoichius resists. That's why, you see often, I notice sometimes yeshiva, sometimes a boch who's not such a masmid. We all know many of us, we're not masmidim. And yet, in middle of davening, we can so get into a Gemara, it's unbelievable. We could mamish not take our eyes out of a sefer, or out of whatever it is. Where does that big asmada come from? During davening. Because then there's no mitzvah to learn. We're not mitzvah ba'oisa, we're an eina mitzvah ba'oisa. So it's easier. But when one is learning with a Kabbalah's oil, with a chiyuv, and he has, it's part of his life, just like he knows he has to earn a panos, and he knows he has to make a living, and he has to have discipline, he has to get this seder, he has to be mekayim it. He must do it, it's with an oil. He feels that pressure. If I didn't learn today, he's not going to go to sleep until he takes care of it. Rabbanan writes in the Mishnah Rabbanan, he says, the term of a person is that he's afraid to bring the oil HaTorah. He's afraid with an oil. Father, I'll hear, I'll listen, I hear a nice word. But to have the oil HaTorah he doesn't want to have. Because he thinks that the oil makes it harder. But the emes is punkt verkehrt. The greater the Kabbalah's oil, the less the Nisayan is. It's a fact. It says, look, Yom Kippur. You're not allowed to eat Yom Kippur. Somebody could be so hungry Yom Kippur, he doesn't have a Nisayan not to eat. Doesn't enter his mind to eat. He could be very hungry. But that's not one of his options. Because the reason we find things difficult is because it's misroifif, because it's not so pressured on me. I know if I want, I don't have to do it. That makes it harder to do. When I know I have to do it, he says a lashon b'chol davar lefi toikif kabbalosoi yukton hanisoyin. According to the strength of the Kabbalah, the strength of the oil, the strength of the Mechayev, Yuktan, it becomes smaller than a sign, it becomes easier to do what I have to do. So, being Mekabel on ourselves, a limud with an oil, and a limud with an oil is not a simple limud. A limud with yigiyah, a limud with an oil is before the schar. We know the schar of Talmud Torah for every word of Torah is connected kol ha-mitzvahs kulan. It says that Torah with yigiyah, with Kabbalah's oil, the schar is 1,000 times greater than Torah stam. And I saw once it's been added that it says the schar of learning Torah b'simcha is 1,000 times greater than that. And the Ben Ish Chai that writes a report from a few Makars that the schar of learning Torah on Shabbos is 1,000 times greater than during the week. So imagine if somebody learns Torah b'yagiyah, b'Kabbalah's oil, b'simcha on Shabbos for a few hours. You're going into the billions of hours of Torah that he's learned.
So Mamela, if we have a proper Kabbalah's oil and a proper cheshik, the cheshik could be a mechaper for a lot. And many of us are very busy and it's difficult to find the proper time and find the proper koyach. But like we said, in the time that we do have, the Morva Shomash writes, the ikir mishpat on a person is going to be, what does he do with the time that he has available when he's not Torah b'parnasa? If that time is utilized properly, then he'll get schar for all the times that he was in onus, that all the time that he wasn't able to learn. Comes a Sunday. What is Sunday given for? I know a Yid, a fine balabos, a computer consultant. For the last 30 years, his Seder on Sunday has been, Motzei Shabbos he goes to sleep very early. Sunday morning he gets up 5 o'clock in the morning and goes to mikveh, and he sits till 1. He's an Einikal of Big Yerushalayim at Tzadikim, even though he grew up, he was born in America. He sits until 1, 2 in the afternoon in Talis and Tefillin learning. Once a week, let me be a tzaddik. Once a week, let me do what I have to do. And that's mal olav akosef kili was mekayim all the times that he wasn't able to. So in this day of Erev Shavuos is a time for Kabbalah's oil. Let me decide that I'm going to think about making my limud Torah more serious, a serious part of my life, a real meaningful part of my avodah that I have to answer for and I'm mechuyev for. I just want to leave you with one azaytig in a kuda. It's important as we're ending the days of Sefirah. The Chassam Sofer in Parshas Bahar. The Chassam Sofer writes, "V'ishki yimker beis Moshe of Ir Choyma." He writes, the Ir Choyma is referring to the mouth. Hu loshen. That's the sheyechte bebris ha loshen asher hi misoveves choyma. Ve'ein lo zeh tikkun. If somebody has a peh that's not the way it's meant to be, the tikkun of this mouth is bimei svira shebein pesach la'atzeres. That's when one can be misaken his peh. Uveyoyim ha'atzeres hu hayovel shebo yisuknu b'nei Torah v'yiknu by hashlemus. And the pasuk says, v'hoyse geulosoi atoim shnas memkoroi ad sheyikabel tmimus shona hahu shehu oimed shekol shona v'shona mekabel tmimusoi bayomim ho'ele k'dichsiv tmimois tiyeno. Every year the shlemus of the kedushas hapeh for an entire year could be determined, is determined by his nahagas and svira. Yomim tia geulosoi, that in these days, hu goyel yomim hoel yoinim shenivgemu, he can redeem the days of a whole year that were nivgam. The imlo yigoyel, the pasuk continues, Chas v'sholem yokum latzmisus lakoina oisay hu hayetzahara haloichem al ho'ira hi aktana. The whole year can go to the Yetzahara. V'lo yetzei by Yovel, he will not be freed on Yovel b'yoyim matan Torah when all of Klal Yisrael is makabel to mimusam ela b'chutz yamoy. The Chassam Sofer is telling us that if a person misses his chance in the days of Sefirah to masaken his peh, he could lose it and it goes the entire year chalil to the Yetzahara. I think it would be just kedai in the one day we have left to Kabbalah Torah, we'll all be makabel on ourselves for these next hours to have a perfect peh, to have a perfection of kedushas hapeh. We'll be zoichetake to yomim tiye gulosai, not to miss this opportunity of Yemei Sefirah Chalila to fall into the category of Yokim Latzmisas Lakoina Oisai, and the Eibishter will see our good Ritzoinus, will see our Cheshek, and be Matar, be Mezachechas, be Zoich to Makabel the Torah, and go to the Chuppah B'Shat Tovim Mitzlachas, and bring an Achas Nuach to the Rebbeinu Shalom.